like to give you a little tip about large vessels. This is something I've been doing for quite a long time, and as large vessels go, this one's not all that big. It's about 22 inches tall. What I've come up with is a way to avoid having to turn this portion of the vessel while it's hanging only from this end. I don't have a steady rest. What I do is I turn two complete pieces, including this, before joining the last seam together. It's worked for me, and I'm going to show you how I go about doing that. To reverse mount my upper half of the vessel, I'm going to create a jam chuck with a keeper ring. Because of the curved shape of my vessel, I'm going to fit this up to the inside of the vessel. MDF is really nasty stuff. Make sure you protect your lungs. Now that I have a perfect fitting giant plug, I can make a keeper ring. I'm clamping on a piece of MDF, then I'll drill 4 holes around the edge, and then enlarge the 4 holes just on the outside layer to accommodate my screws. These X's are just so I put it back together the same way it was drilled. Now I can tighten these screws and mount this on the lathe. The first step in creating my keeper ring is to remove this center portion. A parting tool will go right on through. I'm cutting right in the vicinity of where my plug recess is. To undercut a bevel on the underside of this donut, I'll use this diamond pointed scraper. I just want to get a surface that more or less conforms to the vessel profile. Now, after removing these screws, I'll take my drill and enlarge these holes once again. I need them big enough to accommodate some 5/16 inch bolts. Get it all nice and clean, mount my vessel top back onto the giant plug, perfectly centering it, putting my donut ring in place, lining up the X in the right place, and then inserting these bolts through the holes. On the underside of the bolts, I'll put a washer and a wing nut, and I'll pay close attention to make sure I keep my donut ring parallel to my other piece of MDF. These bolts don't have to be super tight. Just nice and snug is usually plenty. Now I can take off this big faceplate and put this on the lathe. First step will be to turn that MDF off, but I want to make sure it's running true. It's running very nicely. My finger is hardly being moved. A little turning and I get rid of the MDF. I'm using the tailstock for as long as possible. I can remove a little of the ebony while I still have the tailstock support. My diamond pointed scraper works well for getting into that last bit. The change in sound will tell you when you're very close. I could have avoided this whole step of mounting this separately. I could have just glued it to the base and turned this after the vessel was completely put together. I don't have a steady rest, and with a vessel over 20 inches tall, this would have been a very difficult piece of turning. Some people might enjoy the turning challenge. I simply like to do it the easiest way. I'm now done with this jam chuck. My top half is pretty much done, at least on the inside. Now obviously, some careful turning was done in order to match these curves. A final check here shows my bottom half just still a little bit large in diameter, so I'm matching that up. With my 2 halves matching on the outside, or at least pretty close, I can focus on the inside. I just use a ruler, check one diameter against the other, and get the two very, very close. I can power sand the inside while I've got easy access. I like to sand in both directions whenever I can. With the insides of both halves all sanded and ready, it's time to put this together. My green tape is just an alignment aid, so rotationally I put it back where I want it. The tape is to protect any glue squeeze out from drizzling down the inside. I put glue on both surfaces, spread the glue, and then very, very carefully align these two pieces. I'll constantly check this over and over with my fingertips. Actually, fingernails will go right there on the seam and feel that edge back and forth as I add weight to the top. I'll constantly check and check, push it back and forth, putting my fingernails right on that ridge and getting this as perfectly centered as possible. Add some weight, check it again. Add some weight, check it again. Here's the weight that I've been stacking. Those are very heavy 5-inch 4-jaw chucks along with an 8-inch faceplate. I let the glue job cure overnight. The seam looks real good, but what's most important to me, how true is it turning? This one turned out great. It's hardly got any run out. To clean up the seam, I'll use a hollowing tool called an eliminator. Here I've even taped a light onto the tool. It doesn't take much. I've got to get rid of the glue first and then just make a nice smooth transition between the two pieces. Then I'll go in with this French curve scraper until I've got a real nice surface that doesn't require too much sanding. With the inside completely finished, ready for finish, I can put a tailstock support on there and go to work on the outside. I intentionally left the wall thickness a little thick. I'll probably remove at least another 1/16 of an inch as I attempt to perfect this curve. For maximum connection strength, I'm leaving the base as big as possible for as long as possible. Now this may seem strange, but this curve is very subtle. Rolling a straight edge will quickly tell me if I've got a flat spot. And you probably already know that your hand will pick up things that the eye will miss, with the vessel moving and with it stationary. Also, I like to do my sanding on large vessels with a 5-inch pad as opposed to the normal 3-inch. Now, as I said at the beginning of this lesson, this is not all that big a vessel. I've done vessels easily twice this size using the same basic technique. But in those cases, instead of just 2 halves, I'll split the vessel into 3 equal sections, turning them independent, fitting them together just as this lesson showed, until I've got the 3 all together. But I've avoided having to turn way out here, some 30 plus inches away from the headstock, and in my case without a steady rest. Now if you've got a steady rest and you're comfortable building a large vessel that way, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I just want to encourage you to give a big vessel a try. Maximize the capacity of your lathe and have some fun with it.